Well, hello everybody, Dr. Faske. I'm back one more time for the third installment of 5 of the 2022-2023 ASBOA Junior High All-Region Trombone Etudes. Today, we're going to look at number 43 on page 22. So just like we did with the other etudes, we're going to take some time today with our pencil before we ever even pick up the trombone, and we're going to map out some things on the page. Okay? So go ahead and take a second, pause the video, grab a pencil, and come back and join me. No, really, go ahead. Go get the pencil. I'll wait for you. Okay. All right, so number 43, it's the shortest etude we've had so far. 3 lines long. The first thing I see here is the word at the very beginning, maestoso. And this time I'm not going to give it to you. I would like you to look up the word. Pause the video, go to Google, type in maestoso, M-A-E-S-T-O-S-O, and then behind that write music term. It'll spit out the answer for you. Okay, I'll go ahead and tell you what it says. Maestoso, majestically. This is a different style than what we've had so far. So when you think majestic, you think something that the chest is puffed out. It's victorious. It's bold. It's sort of fanfare-like. And if you look at some of the figures that are on the page, that holds up. Okay, so go ahead and write majestically next to maestoso. Go ahead, write it in. I'll wait. Okay. Now, we are in 3/4 time, and there is no key signature on the page. There are no flats or sharps. Now, I guess maybe I should say that differently. It is a key signature. It's just that the key signature has no sharps or flats. So again, look at your scale sheet. Look for the major scale that has no sharps and no flats. Okay, did you find it? Which one is it? It should be C major. And what was our check to make sure that that's correct? To make sure that it wasn't a minor scale? We're going to look at the first full measure note, the first downbeat note on the first full measure, and we see that it's a C. And then we fast forward to the end, and that's also a C. So just like in etude number 2, where it was 1 flat, and that meant F major scale, and then we looked at the first note and the last note of the etude, and those were also Fs. It's the same formula, the same pattern, the same way of determining the key. So now we know that we need to work on the C major scale in conjunction with number 43. Now, because we have C major as our key, we're going to be dealing with B naturals. So if you don't have an F attachment trombone, if you have a trombone that's just the 7 positions with no extra tubing, you're going to have to make sure that you can reach 7th position, right? Now, if you can't reach 7th position, I have a really good friend up in the Northeast named Nikki Abisi who has a product called the Extendabone. And it's a 3D printed product that can clip to your slide, and it allows someone that's with much shorter arms to reach those extended positions. I'll have a link in the description below for that product. It's reasonably priced, it doesn't damage the instrument, and it'll help you out if you're struggling with the extended positions. So it's maestoso, it's 3/4 time, it's the key of C. We know that we're going to have some considerations with the valve if you have one. Other than that, I'm just going to go through and play the etude for you and sort of see what we have to consider when we're playing this etude. So here we go from the beginning. Okay, so that's not bad for a first run through, but there's some things that I'd like to take back. But I didn't stop. I kept going. And I think it's really important for you to know that even someone who's been playing the trombone as long as I have, I still make mistakes. There's still going to be things that I may want it to be really, really great, but what comes out of the bell or what comes out of my mouth into the mouthpiece may not always be perfect. There might be a distraction in the room. There might be something that gets in my way from having the best performance possible. But it doesn't mean that I need to scrap the entire thing and assume that it's garbage and I should just not share it with you. If anything, I want to help you learn, maybe from some of my mistakes along the way. So what can I do to make this immediately better? Well, remember in the last video I talked about the dynamic contrast that was existing between forte and piano and how we could create that contrast. Well, I didn't take the time here to talk to you about that, and a couple of them actually caught me off guard. So I'm going to take the time now, just like in previous videos, to talk about the dynamic contrast between the three printed dynamics that I see here. This etude starts out with forte, maestoso. It's big and bold. It's victorious, right? It's majestic. And then we immediately, at the end of the second full measure, drop down to piano dynamic. And sometimes when we have a piano dynamic and some additional technique, which we see the first 16th notes of this etude, it can be really easy to clam up and maybe not allow the air to continue to flow. Even though it's softer, we still have to use our air well. And when we have technical passages in the context of a softer phrase, then we actually have to work harder to maintain clarity, and we need to be able to hear all of those notes. The little notes can get swallowed up if we play too soft, or we still don't use our air effectively in spite of the softer dynamic. Then when you have something that's a little bit louder, you're going to find probably that those 16th notes are easier to play. Now, there's one thing that I want to draw your attention to. If you look at the last measure of the first line of number 43, we have the 2/16 eighth pattern. It's A natural, G, F, A natural, G, F, A, C. The next measure is A natural, G, F sharp, A natural, G, F sharp, because the accidental carries through the measure. So take a second now, grab the pencil that I know you went and got earlier, and put a sharp next to that F sharp on beat 2. And if you really want to be doubly careful, write a fifth position, a 5 over that F sharp on beat 2. You just want to make sure that that carries through the bar, because I can't tell you the number of times that I've heard it not carried through the bar. So go ahead and mark it now so you don't have to commit it to memory. So we have forte at the very beginning. It gets soft and more technical, so we have to make sure we have clarity of sound on all those notes. It gets a little bit louder, which should make that even easier. And then halfway through the second line, we're back at forte, just like the beginning. And this time we have accents on the notes again. We haven't had accents at the softer dynamics, but when we reach forte, this entire next passage, with the exception of 2 slurred notes, has accents. So let's talk about the different accents that exist. I believe that the one that we see here, and I'm going to make sure that I get this right for the video, I think it's this way. Yeah, that's right. Well, what you would see would be this way. The front of the note is the biggest part of the note. It tapers down. It's a way of saying that you hit the note and kind of come away from it, almost like a bell tone. Now, if the accent was sort of turned 45 degrees so that it looked like a rooftop, that would be more of a weight accent, down directly over the note. But this one, or this one, whichever one it is, it's like a mini diminuendo on the music. The loudest part of the note is the front of the note. And so you can also interpret that to say that there's a little bit of space between these louder notes. Now, I have a microphone here that I have a tendency, because of the distance that it needs to be for me to speak to you, I have a tendency to make the microphone clip, so I'm kind of turning my bell a little bit further away to demonstrate. I'm hoping that I don't completely max out the mic when I demonstrate this. But when I have the notes immediately preceding the forte in the second line, I'm aiming for clarity. I'm aiming for flow of air in spite of the softer dynamic. But when I shift to that, I need to be able to shift almost immediately. But I don't want to telegraph. I don't want to let people know, hey, it's about to be loud and accented, until I actually reach those notes. I think sometimes we get so excited about the change that we start doing it before we should. So here you go. I'm going to try to demonstrate what I'm talking about. Lots of contrast. Accented forte notes in the middle of the second line, and then at the very end of the second line, it drops back down to piano. You have to maintain the clarity, but it's no longer accented. So there's a lot going on here in spite of it being a short etude. So what I would recommend that you do, I would go through the entire etude and make sure that you're really comfortable with all the rhythmic figures, because sometimes they're 2/16 and an eighth, and sometimes they're an eighth and then followed by 2/16. And it's sometimes easy to get those kind of mixed up. So just go through at a slower tempo, the tempo di lerno, as one of my teachers used to say, and practice it deliberately to make sure that you're comfortable with all the rhythmic figures, and you're comfortable with the accidentals that exist, and that you're comfortable with the dynamics. Even though it's slower, and that will make the louder playing harder, sometimes backing it off in terms of speed can be the best thing for helping you clean up the music. So for example, I might play the opening passage like this. See, I messed up right there. So now what would I do if I make that mistake? I'm going to stop and I'm going to grab my pencil and I'm going to circle that measure. I got distracted because I wasn't quite sure exactly where I was going to stop, and my brain power was split between playing the trombone and wondering when I should stop playing the trombone. It's a good lesson to learn that sometimes it's about doing everything you can to allow your focus to be on one thing at a time rather than the multiple things that we often have going on. So I'm going to try that one more time. And so on and so forth. I'm going at a tempo that's slower, that allows me to do all the various things that are in the etude that are asked of me to do. And it can really help. Now, don't do it forever. You need to get comfortable with playing it faster. But there's no shame and I don't see any negative reason that makes sense to not practice it slower. So take your time. Everyone's journey is slightly different. And do what you need to do to be successful. So now I'm going to go ahead and put a performance here at the end of the entire etude. And if you have any questions about this or any of the other things on the playlist, please let me know, and I'd be more than happy to help. Okay? Thanks for watching.